Cool. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't hear Kapora, but we can get started here. So glad to see so many of you in here at the European and Asia office hours. Um, there's definitely a lot to discuss, I think, just in the general market and where Klima is sitting and such. One of those things being the whole COP26 conference. So we're going to be releasing an article on this well, probably by the end of the day, just to discuss sort of the impact on the COP26 conference, and especially the Article 6 mechanism that creates this global compliance market. But essentially, the general feeling in the industry is that this is quite a bullish development, both for the voluntary carbon market, but also for the compliance carbon markets around the world. So just to give a brief background on this for everybody. So essentially, Article 6 forms the legal framework, which allows the use of a market-based, say, climate change mitigation mechanism for countries that are pursuing their what's called nationally determined contributions. So these naturally determined contributions, or NDCs, they include things like their total emissions, right? Or whether or not any emissions reductions activities were financed or purchased, in the case of like offsets. And so essentially, the Article 6 mechanism really starts to build up this global carbon market where countries can trade these mitigation outcomes, whether they're a reduction or if they're purchasing credits to offset their own emissions and such. And for a long while, these different COP conferences were happening, but countries could not agree on how exactly Article 6 would be working. But that has been sorted out, essentially. And so, there were open questions previously about what role the voluntary market might play, and, whether or not every voluntary market transaction would have to be registered then in the compliance system and so on. There were questions about whether what's called a corresponding adjustment would be made so that, if, for example, Switzerland is financing an afforestation project in Peru, for example, then this would require Peru to not necessarily count these emissions towards its own NDC, because then these emission reductions would be transferred to Switzerland, who did the financing. So this just ensures that there's not a double counting of these emissions reductions. The other aspect was the role that the VCM would play, and whether or not every voluntary carbon project would have to be registered by countries that were hosting them. And this isn't necessarily the case. Of course, companies can still finance offsetting projects and count them towards their own emissions reductions, but they're not going to be double counted in a country. Like, it's not that if let's say this forestry project in Peru or something is financed by a company, or just let's say a DAO, because maybe this will happen in the future. Say a DAO finances an emissions reduction project in Brazil or something like this. Brazil doesn't necessarily need to automatically count that towards its emissions reductions. And if they did, it would go to the compliance market anyway. But then, of course, those emissions reductions can be placed on the voluntary market and then traded. So it's basically clarified a lot of things for different players. And recent carbon pricing really reflects this. So if we look at some pricing updates today in the legacy carbon market, for example, the general renewable energy assessment was priced a bit higher. It's gone up 15% since November 4th. The Corsia eligible credits, so these are credits specifically for the aviation industry, they've been valued now at $8.35, so they've gone up 10% since November 4th. You have a nature-based index on the CBL Carbon Exchange, and this has gone up 20%. It's now sitting at $13, and that's also since November 4th. So again, there's just a lot of, I think, factors in the industry. Certain Klima is one. Klima has been cited in a number of different articles from, for instance, Carbon Pulse. I believe there was an ecosystem marketplace article that talked a bit about, these alternative investments into the offset space and how it's driving pricing. But also, you just have a lot going on with corporate buying, and now that the Article 6 mechanism has been clarified, I think there's a lot more security or a feeling of reliability in the market. And so now you have further engagement from corporates and soon governments as well to a greater extent. So it's all very exciting, and I think it sets a stage for a much healthier ecosystem growth in the carbon market, and that'll have positive ramifications for Klima as well, of course. So that's on that, and I'd love to hear from Kapora. I don't think I can hear him still, but Kapora, if you want to jump in quick, I'll just wait till your mic's on. Yeah, I think he's trying to rejoin. So I see there's some people that want to hop on stage. Happy to start just diving into questions and such. So I'll start inviting people up here.
Does it work now? Yes, I hope so.
All right, Leo, I think you made it up. Nobel, you're here. If you'd like to speak.
Can you hear me? The guy before me made it before me, so if he's still here, he can go.
Dionysus, can you hear me? Because maybe
Yes, I can
you
hear you now.
Yeah, I
perfect.
hear you as well now.
I can hear both of you.
So can I shoot my question, or Kaipora wants to say something? So
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, it is connected with the Bitmo platform that's launching. As far as I heard and read about it, they are think is that they want to be the marketplace for real offsets on chain, like maybe even issue them on chain in the first hand. If that was to happen, would Klima be able to acquire such real offsets on chain that were issued natively here?
Yeah, this is actually, we have a whole section in the article that we're going to release today on this. So you're speaking about the Bitmo platform that's releasing these internationally traded mitigation outcomes, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Blockchain for. Sorry, I don't take that.
Climate Foundation, yeah. It's yes, so certainly. They've reached out to different stakeholders at the COP26 conference, and they basically have the infrastructure in place to do this. And so when these ITMOs are issued on the blockchain, there's certainly an opportunity then that we're exploring with them where these could be bonded as well.
Yeah, great to hear. So, thank you. I don't think I have any other questions actually. If no one
Yeah, I
else.
mean, also in regard to ITMOs, it would also require quite a bit of development work on the token side of things. And as far as I'm concerned, Toucan is lacking a bit of development power. They're also in full mode operations right now, helping people out with the bridging process. So it's definitely possible to implement ITMOs, but it would take some time. Yeah, sorry, didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, and it comes back to the question of, there's various different assets, and imagine in time there's going to be, let's say, more native on-chain activity in the carbon market, which is great for Klima, right? So this opens up possibilities, both on the IMO front, but looking ahead, as we've touched on in previous calls, also different types of offsets and so on.
All right, we have a new speaker, Carbon Puppy. Yeah, you already sent the invite.
Hi guys,
And
how are you doing? Can you hear me?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. So again, yeah, congrats for your work, guys. You're really doing well. I just wanted to ask a few questions. So as I understand from small chain analysis that I run, I see that holders of important quantities of Klima are selling, and retail investors or small quantities are buying. So which is good because it's expanding the number of holders, which is very.
You're a little bit quiet. Can you maybe repeat the last sentence again?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay, so I was saying that I see holders of large quantities of Klima are selling, and we have more and more retail buyers, which is quite healthy because it's expanding the number of Klima holders. But in this context, what do you see as future incentives to drive more demand in? And don't you see the pre-Klima holders as price suppressors in a way? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's healthy to get some of that out of whales' hands. You know, there's certainly people that bought in the the IDO, people in the LBP, and so on, to disperse that. But you know, in terms of incentives, I think a lot of this comes down to just driving the ecosystem growth and the partnerships and integrations that will happen, both with potentially BCT, but then also with Klima and so on. And so, you know, we're a month old at this point. The DAO is moving forward and getting the community organized. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening with some of the teams that have been put together. Certainly on the partnership side, which I'll be involved in, and to kind of drive those things forward and to build more demand. So it's all in progress. Certainly hear your thoughts there, and shout out to everyone in the community that I think has already kind of gotten the ball rolling. A lot of those initiatives.
Yeah, I also think that driving demand for BCT or for other pools that will be eligible for the treasury, that will probably have higher quality or much higher quality, will give Klima more value and thus stabilize the price and might even increase it. I mean, I personally think that this growth of the Klima price after the LBP has been pretty fast. I mean, the overall crypto market is pretty heated in my opinion. So I personally don't think it's any really negative sign if the price is dropping, and I think that's like a rather short-term development. And of course, like if there's selling pressure from IDO participants or from P-Klima holders, that's an issue for the price. But also, a question if that will really affect it long term, you know, when Klima will become like a very widely accepted currency in the overall crypto market and maybe even beyond, then I don't think it will be an issue.
Amazing, guys. Thanks. So I see that there is a lot of exciting stuff coming. I'm really looking forward to see what's gonna come. Just a final question, like if you see that selling pressure from pre-Klima holders going more up, do you think the DAO can vote to probably squeeze it with their supply or something like that?
Yeah, that's definitely technically possible to cap the P-Klima or pre-Klima investing terms. In my opinion, they are pretty high because it's the Olympus fork, and it might make sense at some point to evaluate that model and change it.
Amazing, guys. Thanks a lot. I love your project. See you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Ciao.
I'm Bobby. See ya.
So just want to ask, and that how is the bond policy change going that was issued last week, if I remember correctly, the BCV part?
There was another announcement actually about a change that was just implemented. So these bond policy changes are usually they're all announced, and you can see when they've been implemented then. Just trying to look for the last one.
I'm actually onboarding with policy now. I've been kind of slacking, working on so many other things in the last couple of months, and I really want to become pro at policy and understanding the mechanics, but I'm not yet.
Oh, we have Cujo from the community can jump up here to answer that one fully. Cujo,
Yeah.
you can become a speaker.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's why I'm genuinely interested in how the policy work as well, because I've grasped the basics of Olympus back in the day, but never got deep into it. But it seems like I will here.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
All right, so yeah, I'm actually over in the right time zone for this time. So there were a couple of changes. We shifted over some of that capacity over to BCT, and we've seen we have seen that go into effect here. I was actually just looking at this a little bit ago. So yeah, our naked, like just the straight reserve bonds, we have been doing more of those since making that change. And then regarding the max bond change that was just announced, that's more about making bonds kind of more competitive more often. So instead of somebody comes in and does a max bond for say BCT, and then that's where we've seen the discount rates stay negative for so long. By reducing that max bond percentage, it just means that they won't that discount percent won't be quite as volatile, and so it'll be more profitable to do bonds quicker. They'll just be smaller bonds overall. So that's what's going on that front.
Appreciate the updates on that, Cujo. Does that answer your question, Nobel? Not seeing his mic go on, but we'll get another person up here then for the next one.
Yeah, so somebody asked in the Q&A channel about Olympus Pro style functions being released on via Klima DAO or from Klima DAO on Polygon, and I think that's a good assessment that if us or Olympus won't do it, then somebody else will, because it looks like it's a very successful model, and there are amazing really great DeFi projects going for this. The whole liquidity mining game is very flawed with the mercenary capital, and I think the bonding and protocol liquidity is just amazing. So since we have mostly we're a fork of Olympus, I think maybe not sure if we're in a position to do this on our own, but I would say that we're definitely looking into it, and we would be cool to collaborate on this more with the Olympus community.
I think one of the things related to this, because there was some discontent, I think, in the Olympus community, some of them that thought that we're just copying Olympus Pro. That wasn't the case. That in a previous call, it was mentioned about sustainability as a service as something Klima could bring out, to integrate with protocols, where they could then just natively stake Klima or procure offsets or other assets that we might have in the treasury at that point. But that was something that was definitely interesting. But of course, it wouldn't just be like a pure liquidity provision like Olympus Pro.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, also if our expertise in carbon markets is required there, consulting other projects, that would make it a different product.
Yeah. Hello, Lulu.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. First, a very nice project. I was digging into the voluntary carbon market to understand a bit what's happening following the COP26. I saw that they talk about certified emission reduction to reach the Paris Agreement. I see that in South Korea, they already use CERs as a way to avoid taxes, around $20. I was wondering if your company will also consider CERs then in the treasury to back the climate token. And if not, I was wondering why.
Good question. So what was agreed on at COP? So essentially, a lot of countries didn't want CERs to be able to be used in the future for their Article 6 contributions because many of these projects are seen as lacking what's called additionality, meaning that the finance that they gained from selling offsets was not necessary to actually get the project started. So this is the case with a lot of these large-scale hydro projects, some of the landfill gas projects, etc. And so there's questions about the quality of the offsets essentially. But what's happened at COP is they agreed that said, okay, CERs issued after 2013 could indeed be utilized as part of the Paris Agreement. So that'll kind of provide quite a bit of buy pressure then on those credits and such. And I think they're going to be going for quite a higher price. I mean, there's definitely not enough inventory of these to go around natively from projects in countries like South Korea basically has a huge deficit on what they would need to acquire. So they're probably going to be out on the market looking to buy these CERs, potentially from other countries as well. So yeah, I think because of this quality standpoint and because the CERs are right now anyway, destined for this compliance market more so, it's not necessarily something that Klima would be involved in right away. We'd mentioned the whole ITMO thing. I mean, these ITMOs are going to be much more recent. They're likely to be at a much higher quality because one of the other things agreed at COP was just to have sort of more robust standards on the additionality of projects and their permanence and so on. And so we'd feel more comfortable, I think, interfacing with ITMOs and so on than we would with the CER market that's sort of flooded with a lot of lower quality offsets and so on. So yeah, that's sort of the position that we have on that.
Thanks. And just two more questions linked to what you said. In that case, how will Klima operate on the ITMOs market? Will it be financing projects which will issue ITMOs, or will you buy ITMOs and store them in inventory? And second question, because the CERs are of lower quality for some, apparently, than the VCS, if I understand correctly, would it be good to buy those credits in order to force governments to buy better quality credits and push prices up for better quality CO2 credits?
Interesting points there. I mean, the CER market is massive. There's hundreds and hundreds of millions of tons. Much more than what's Verra certified and so on. And so that could be. It would be quite tough, I think. Now that being said, we'll have to see how the demand from countries influences the market because, right, they can utilize CERs that are 2013 vintage and above. So we'll have to see how that plays out. in the future, if there needs to be more assets that can be bonded into the treasury, it's something that, of course, the teams can look at. We have a large advisory group, and there's plenty of people in the community also that have deep carbon market experience. So it'll be an ongoing conversation, right? And then in regards to the ITMOs, yeah, essentially, we have to dig in deeper with them on their platform. As I understand it, they're ETH native for these to issue them on the blockchain. Question would be then getting those over to Polygon, whether that uses Toucan or if there's some other method that Blockchain for Climate Foundation is already working on. Just more discussions need to happen there, essentially. But the end result would be that these ITMO credits could then be bonded to the treasury, right? And that's something that Klima would accept into its treasury to build up. And yeah, I mean, looking ahead, given the demand for these by countries and so on, I think it would be a very interesting opportunity and another positive way for Klima to be impacting this whole market.
Super nice. Thanks for the answers, and good luck with the project.
Cheers. Thank you. Two more people here.
Hello.
Hey.
Is everyone good? Yeah.
Doing well.
Yeah. So, by the way, this is a Q&A, isn't it? I've just come on now.
Yeah. Do you have any questions or anything?
Yeah. So basically, just really a price prediction for Klima. I know it's only been less than a month since it has come out. It's probably gone up 100% and then back down 100% since that's happened. My question really is, where would you scale Klima with other forks of Olympus, such as Wonderland and all these other crazy ones with 6 billion% APY? I'll be honest, the only reason I've stuck with Klima instead of a higher APY is because of the longer term. Well, now I'm seeing Wonderland Finance shoot to the moon, but obviously just want to see what the predictions are for Klima, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to compare with other forks. I know there's a lot of activity. There's a lot of different forks. Some of them are pursuing, different structures, I suppose, and innovations, if you can call it that, to pull these huge APYs. Of course, the higher the APY, the faster the dilution, essentially, which I think Zeus talked about on Twitter recently. I mean, look, Klima is tackling a completely different market. We're backing Klima with carbon offsets, which is something that no one else is really doing in the crypto space right now. And so yes, we're using the Olympus model, but we're leveraging it for a very different cause, and we're backing it with, in our view, is something that's a bit more of an uncorrelated asset with the rest of the crypto market, and an asset which is experiencing quite a lot of price appreciation due to a variety of factors, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I can't, me personally, I mean, Kapor, you could jump in if you'd want, but I don't really want to compare Klima to any other fork because I think we're operating in a very, very different way.
Yeah, I haven't even had time to look into the other forks, and I'm sure they're amazing projects, but yeah, I would, especially now, not compare them as I don't know much. Does it answer you? Like, do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, do you ever think Klima could do a node reward service?
What was that? A node reward service?
A node reward service, for example, like Strong Node You get rewards for every transaction per block. Would there ever be a similar thing with Klima?
Like running a Polygon node or something like this.
You mean validator reward?
I've actually not done much research into Matic if they've made a node, but I know about strong nodes, and I just wanted to know if it's the same kind of thing, really, because they are partnered with Matic at the moment to give us rewards in Matic as well. But yeah, I just want to know if Klima would be able to do any node reward service.
It's not something that we've actually looked at, but I'm not sure if
I'm still not sure if I understood that. You talking about the layer one, or you talking about the protocol itself? Because Klima DAO is just an application on the blockchain, and it doesn't require any nodes. We don't need to run nodes ourselves.
I hear that you don't need to, but in the future, would you want to? That's what I'm asking.
I don't think so. I mean, there are obviously issues with some centralized validation services or an access to full nodes via like Infura, and the whole ecosystem is using Infura, basically your Alchemy, but that is also being decentralized by amazing and projects like Pocket Network, and I don't think it's feasible in the current state for projects themselves to run Polygon nodes, especially since Polygon nodes are a bit maybe hacky or harder to operate even than like Geth or a parity client for Ethereum. So I don't think that's feasible from our side, and the benefit would be really slim. So.
All right, thank you for your honesty.
Yeah, thanks too.
just sent a few more invites out. Three people. Okay, Rez, you're the first one up here. Why'd you start off?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I've been looking in the Vera registry for quite a while now, and what I know on a high level is procurement specialists have a very specific approach to looking into projects to try and figure out quality. And now I have this understanding that you guys in Toucan are planning on possibly creating some sort of a higher quality pool. What are the things you're going to look at on this metadata level, which is going to give you a good indication that this might be a valuable or desirable credit?
Yeah, so you could base it on the methodologies, and you can look and say, okay, for instance, nature-based credits would encompass projects that are protecting forests, but it could also include things like afforestation and therefore actual carbon removal because you're planting trees. So that could be desirable. The other aspect would be looking at the vintage, because generally there's, the consensus in the industry that a newer vintage would be more desirable, just because every year the oversight for verification and monitoring and everything gets a bit better. So vintage and then the methodology type, I think, are the primary two criteria. Kipora, you have other thoughts on that as well?
I mean, I know that Toucan Protocol has been looking intensely into the framework from Task Force for Scaling Voluntary Carbon Markets, and they released or came up with a lot of attributes that are not even existing in Vera or Gold Standard or others yet. And it would be possible to classify offsets or on-chain credits but in Toucan Protocol via these newer attributes. And the smart contracts of Token Protocol support all these new attributes. And one of them, for example, is removal. Like the method of is like the carbon actually being avoided, or is it being removed, for example? And
Yeah.
Dionysus, you have probably an opinion on this. I would say that removal in generally is like much more valuable as it, yeah, like from a additionality perspective is really makes a good credit. And that could be something that that could be like removal only pools, for example.
This aligns precisely with the Science Based Targets Initiative, the final criteria they have for net zero. And if companies are actually going to make any net zero claims, then when they're at that state of net zero, they need to be procuring carbon removal type offsets to basically offset any residual emissions they have. Leading up to that point, they could still use mitigation type offsets potentially. But yeah, the general consensus is once we get further along in trying to reach a state of net zero, it needs to be carbon removals. So absolutely, that's kind of the final state.
And there's obviously a lot of technology lacking, right? I mean, it would be amazing to be able to store carbon under, like, remove it from the atmosphere, or it could be something like burning biomass and then storing the carbon emission underground with like CCS technology, but it's all in R&D, research and development. So it would probably take maybe more than a decade. Or probably more than a decade, but I mean, long term, that's the way to go. The IPCC also is very clear on that these technologies are much needed.
Yeah, agreed. I think we're quite a long ways out from really extremely high quality carbon credits being really scalable. For instance, like direct air capture. Currently, it's very early stage. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure you guys were really keeping your eye on the ball when it comes to quality. And yeah, I appreciate your work. Cheers, guys.
Hey, thanks so much.
One more piece on that point. I think in regards to carbon capture and storage, what is coming up in the next year, which is good, is Gold Standard and Verra both are kind of finalizing their biochar standard. And biochar is a very interesting nature-based method of carbon removal that has a longer carbon storage durability than even an afforestation project. And this is something that's hopefully more scalable. The other is they have a grasslands methodology, at least Verra does. So for soil carbon sequestration in grassland areas. And yeah, I think the first project for this was in the Serengeti in Kenya, if I'm not mistaken. So these interesting nature-based carbon removals are starting to hit the market, and hopefully they'll be able to scale up a lot more than what's feasible right now with carbon capture and storage, simply because of the cost. And I'd have to look at the source again, but there was something about like there's certain portions of Africa that it would be cheaper to use renewable energy to desalinate water and irrigate land to plant trees than it would be to set up a carbon capture and storage facility. So I think that just goes to show you that like these nature-based solutions are still far more effective from a financing perspective than what's capable with technology as of yet.
Oh yeah, definitely. I agree. That's also the space I'm currently working in, more or less.
Very cool. Well, glad to have you here, and hope you can keep sharing your thoughts and contributions and everything else.
Yeah, well, you can find me hanging around the carbon market chat. But yeah, cheers, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks so much.
Hey guys, I hope you're doing good. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, good morning.
Hey.
So yeah, my question, I'm just gonna post a link over to the Office Q&A text chat, and that reverts to that question that Teddy asked. Has to do with the wrapped token. Have you guys already heard about the wrapped token? Do you know what I'm asking here?
Briefly, in the context of Olympus, I'm familiar, and mostly from like a tax perspective for people when they're staking. But yeah, Kapora, do you have a more in-depth understanding of it?
Yeah, Chas talked about it. WS Klima, WS Ohm, but I'm not really familiar.
Okay. Well, basically, it's quite important for a lot of countries. I mean, in Germany and UK, he's naming 2 countries. There's a lot of more other countries. And what it does is like Teddy wrote about it very long. You guys can read it there, or you can just read the most important one. To put this into context, using the 10 Klima as an example, imagine staking for a year. 10S Klima with the current rebase rates as they are equals 1533 rebases at 1,054. It gives you an amazing 38,503 tokens. But if the average price of those rebates is at which it was received, then you get a tax bill of $15 million. And if your Klima is then worth only maybe 50, 500, nobody can really tell. But if it's 50, then you have tokens worth $1.9 million with a tax bill of $15 million. So it's quite important for a lot of German investors, a lot of UK investors to actually get this wrapped Klima. Do you guys think you could plan that in?
Yeah, I think we gotta pick up the topic on a team call. It seems pretty important. I mean, obviously that the whole issue with taxation and cryptocurrencies is that there is no very much, like there's no clear guidance and regulation in many countries. In most countries, and a lot of speculation. I mean, I don't see where in which circumstances taxation of cryptocurrencies would make you bankrupt. You actually make profit and then you go bankrupt and are in debt because of it. I don't think that can be justified with any law. But even if like all of it is taxed away, it would not make any sense. So
yeah, there is actually already like in Germany, there's already a new what they call the draft for the new cryptocurrency taxation system. I don't know if you guys know, but Germany and Austria have like one of the biggest books on taxation. They basically invented taxation. So they're pretty quick to get on everything. And yeah, in that taxation draft, it's not set in stone. It has to go through court and everybody has to accept it and everything. But it already has been drafted here now in June. And there it basically says that, yeah, they will do it in this method. That means that the example from Teddy here with the 10 Klima, after a year, it would come to pass.
Okay, interesting. I will definitely look into this. I'm also a resident in Germany. But yeah, I heard about there is this staking thing going on that if you stake your tokens in any way and they generate yield, the holding period extends to 10 years, which has not passed, I think, lawmakers. But yeah, it's a proposal that could very well be implemented soon.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, cool. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thanks so much too.
Cheers. I can stay for about another question or so. Do you just want to run it until 12? Or
call very soon.
yeah, we can take one more question then, and then we can call it after that. So we have Evolution up here.
Hey guys, how you doing? Love the project. Just want to say that. Happy you guys are doing what you're doing. I was wondering so I'm a novice when it comes to the carbon market, so I have no idea if this is already implemented by the credits, but does Klima have any goals for safeguarding biodiversity as a method of carbon sequestration, or just pairing up with any biodiversity focused movements and conservation projects?
I mean, I'm not sure if we have any partnerships, Dionysus, maybe you know better, but I think conservation and biodiversity is extremely important. Many people might not know this, but we are experiencing a mass extinction, and a lot of animals and species have been extinct because of climate change, more than ever before in history on this planet, probably. Yeah, that's it's a tremendous problem, and we're all responsible. Whoever is using technology is responsible, and I think incentivizing biodiversity protection in some ways would be amazing. I'm not sure if there are any credits for that, or standards that could be traded, but I'm sure once there is, we will try to onboard it, and if there's none, we might work on creating our own.
Yeah, it's definitely a critical issue. Thankfully, there are additional certifications on carbon offsets that point to this. So in the Verra standard, you have CCB, it's the Community Climate and Biodiversity Standard, where they do have to quantify the impact on biodiversity that the projects have. These credits are generally seen as higher quality, and they'd certainly be applicable then for their own pool in the future. But biodiversity credits themselves actually do exist, but it's more of a compliance thing in a few markets. I'm familiar with the US and the Australian system for biodiversity offset trading. And so it's something there. And I think the carbon market is probably going to pick up this issue more and more, especially as it moves more towards the higher quality credits, whether they be nature-based or technological or whatever. They're still going to be able to get these additional certifications on top that quantify the community and the biodiversity impacts.
Thanks for your answer, guys. Yeah, biodiversity is a huge detriment right now, and obviously it's a great proxy for the resistance or resilience of a environment. So it'd be fascinating to improve that through a project like this. I know with the growth of what I guess is being coined as DeSci, or decentralized science, there's a couple projects that are just focusing on funding new research, or research that doesn't usually get through the old guard. And I know recently there's been a huge call by scientists to implement biotechnology to improve biodiversity. So perhaps we could get secure funding for research groups or projects in the future as a DAO. But that's just my own spitball. Thanks for your answers, guys. That was great.
Cheers, son. Thanks for the question.
Thanks a lot.
All right. I think that's where we wrap it up for today then.
Yeah, sounds good.
Awesome. I see we had someone that just joined. I really have to run. Is it a quick question, Balance, or?
Yeah. Just wanted to say, you guys are doing a really great job tonight with answering all the questions and everything. And this is a great project. My question is, if let's say I were to look at Kaipora's profile picture for too long, and I rebase before the 8 hours, like I rebase in my pants, will I still get the rewards?
Excellent. I think that's a great way to end the office hours then.
You guys have a good night. Thank you.
All right.
Have a good one. Okay.
Yeah, cool. All right. Cheers, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day.
See you soon.